Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today I'm going to talk to you about some of my favourite books set in London. So the other day I put up a post on my community tab saying I was looking for a book tag video to do this week and did anyone have any suggestions? And a lot of people said they'd like to hear me talk about books with a London theme. That may have been partly driven by the fact that I put a photograph of myself standing in front of Buckingham Palace in that post, but that was definitely the common theme that came up from people. And Jim from the channel Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff pointed out in the comments that he created a London BookTube tag last year, and maybe I could do that. And that was one I remember coming out at the time. Jim always creates fantastic tags. I just didn't manage to get to it at the time. So I'm going to do it now. And what I'm going to do to kind of tie the two things together. So Jim's tag has a series of prompts. So a book tag is a series of questions, basically, with a bookish theme. So Jim's tag talks about books set in London and then asks you to name your favourite similar book. And you'll see what I mean when I get to the questions. So what I'm going to try and do to tie it fully back to London is for all of my answers are books that are set in London. So they're not necessarily my very favourite thing of that kind of book, but they're my favourite thing of that kind of book set in London. Okay, so here's the first prompt. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is set in London. What is your favourite book about time travel? So my favourite book about time travel set in London is Doctor Who and the Dinosaur Invasion by Malcolm Hulke. So this is a book I absolutely adored as a kid. So I was a big fan of Doctor Who anyway, and loved reading. And reading Doctor Who books is one of my really early memories of just absolutely loving books and loving reading. And this one had dinosaurs as well, so it was even better. So in this book, the Doctor and his assistant they get to London and it's like deserted, and then like dinosaurs appear, and somehow there's been like a rift in time and dinosaurs have invaded London. So I remember thinking it was absolutely fantastic. Second prompt then, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf is set in London. What book do you intend to read for next month's May of the Moderns? So, as I said, this tag was originally from last year. So May of the Moderns is an annual BookTube event, takes place in May, where people read books written in the first half of the 20th century, basically, so the modern period. And I actually haven't got an answer for this one. I haven't even thought about May of the Moderns yet. I've just made a video which will have gone up yesterday if you're watching this on the day it goes up on Tuesday. So my Monday video is me talking about kind of my plans for the rest of the year, and part of that is to allow myself a bit more freedom in my reading. So May of the Moderns, I'll confess, is not a BookTube event I'm particularly interested in taking part in, so I'm not planning to read anything for it. But if I happen to find a book from the first half of the 20th century that I'm going to read in May, then I will say I'm participating in May of the Moderns. But yeah, as of yet, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one. Okay, next prompt then. A Darker Shade of Magic by V E Schwab is set in 4 parallel Londons. Have you read any fantasy books set in our London or other London? So a couple I can think of. So one is the Rivers of London series by Ben Aronovich, of which I've read. I think I've only read the first one of those, but really did quite enjoy that. And I think I've got pretty much all of them on my Kindle. So I do need to dive into those ones soon. And the other one is, you can see it up there, Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, which I read a few years ago, which is another excellent kind of alternative London fantasy novel. Okay, next question then. Charles Dickens wrote many books set in London. Which is your favourite Dickens novel? So anyone who watches the channel will know that I haven't had a great deal of success with Dickens recently, having DNFed Great Expectations. So my favourite Dickens novel, and indeed a novel set in London, is the only one I've read, and I think it's not technically a novel, I think it's a novella, and that's A Christmas Carol. So that one wins by default. Next question then. Sherlock Holmes is a famous fictitious resident of London. What is your favourite murder mystery? So again, my favourite murder mystery set in London, I'm going to go here with I Was Dora Suarez by Derek Raymond from his Factory series, which I've talked about on the channel before. So an absolutely fantastic series of detective novels, incredibly grim and bleak and disturbing. I Was Dora Suarez is particularly effective. I think it's the most effective and best written of the series. So a very disturbing book about a detective investigating the murder of a young woman and really coming to identify with the young woman and trying to understand what she went through as a victim in his pursuit of the killer. So an absolutely fantastic detective novel. I'll throw in another one because I love mysteries. So my second one then is another series, again not totally set in London. So I think quite often they go outside of London, but the main characters live in London, and that's the Vinyl Detective series by Andrew Cartmel, which is about a guy he's like a record expert, like a vinyl expert, who gets hired by people to find like rare records and invariably ends up solving mysteries. It's very much like the kind of thing you can imagine being a TV show on a Sunday evening. It's kind of gentle crime, but really fantastic, really entertaining. I really enjoy them very much. Okay, next question then. Paddington Bear by Michael Bond was named after Paddington Station in London. What is your favourite anthropomorphic animal in literature? So I'm going to cheat a bit with this one to keep it London based, and I'm going to go with the rats from James Herbert's novel The Rats. So they're not really anthropomorphic in that they don't have kind of the human characteristics that Paddington Bear or a character like that has, but they do exist collectively as a character in the book that feels like it has kind of motivations and things like that. So I think that kind of fits, and The Rats is such a fantastic book and such a fantastic London book as well. Next question then. The Hogwarts Express departs from platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross Station. What was the last book you DNF'd? So the last book I DNF'd that was set in London, appropriate enough, was a Dickens book. So as already mentioned, Great Expectations by Dickens defeated me. So that was the last London-based book that I DNF'd. Next question then. Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby is about his obsession with the Arsenal football team. Which is your favourite sports team? So I don't like sports at all. I do not have a favourite sports team. Funnily enough, I have read Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby, having been persuaded, shall we say, to read it by a commenter, DDB, and I did enjoy it despite the fact it was about sport. If I did have a favourite sports team, so if I was into football, Arsenal, which is what Fever Pitch is about, would probably be my team. So of my kind of relatives, my mum and dad aren't into sports at all. My mum kind of likes tennis, but my dad isn't at all. But my grandfather, my mum's dad, was a very keen sports fan, and his football team was Arsenal. So if I did support a football team, it probably would be Arsenal, but I don't. Okay, next question then. Bridget Jones's Diary is a wonderful romantic comedy set in London. Which is your favourite romantic comedy? So it did take me a while to come up with an answer for this one because I'm not someone who reads a great deal of romantic comedies, as you may have gathered if you've watched the channel for any length of time. But for this one, I'm going to go with The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley, which wasn't heavy on the comedy side, but it definitely had some comic moments. So this is a Regency romance with a neurodiverse hero, which I really enjoyed. A real page turner, great deal of fun. Not the kind of thing I normally read, but I really did enjoy it a lot. Okay, 2 questions left. So the next one is, when was the last time you visited London? So that was on Saturday. So I do go up to London fairly regularly, once a week or so, for work. But I actually went up this Saturday for pleasure. So I went up with my wife and son. We went to the theatre, had a nice meal out. It was very, very nice indeed. And it was a lovely sunny day as well. So we had some nice walks through St James's Park and places like that. So yeah, a very pleasant Saturday in London. And the final question then is, what was the last book you read set in London? And that was Call for the Dead by John le Carré, the first of the George Smiley novels, which I read earlier this month, which is excellent. A really enjoyable kind of espionage themed murder mystery. So normally at this point in a tag video, I would tag some people, but given that this tag is a year old, I'm not going to bother with that. But if you're watching this and you haven't done the tag, it is quite a fun one. So, consider yourself tagged if you fancy doing it. Okay, time for a random book from the shelves. So I've talked about one London-based horror novel already, The Rats. Here's another one, and another excellent one, albeit with a very different vibe to The Rats. So this is Suckers by Anne Bilson, which is a 90s vampire novel set in London with a kind of an analysis of kind of yuppie wine bar living, as well as some good horror stuff. So yeah, a really, really excellent London horror novel that I definitely recommend. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments the last time you visited London. Let me know your favourite London-based book. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.